Hot Reds podcast. Here are your hosts, Ricky Logan and Roger Straz.
Welcome into the Red Hot Reds podcast. My name is Ricky Logan. I'm a writer on Reds on SI. I am not joined by Roger today. Today I'm joined by Austin Layton. Austin, thanks for hopping on with me and talking about this Series W that we had after a crapshoot of a week in Chicago.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on. Sorry for anybody that's disappointed after the intro looking for Roger, but filling in this week. Glad to be on with you. I like you guys' show a lot, so it's cool to be on. We'll have to get on with Roger as well, but much better feeling in your mouth after this series compared to the last one against the Cubs. So glad to be talking some Reds, actually, which is not where I thought I'd be maybe 2 days ago. But
yeah, I mean, I feel you there. Coming off of just an absolute disappointment in Chicago. But first, I wanted to shout out our sponsor, Frost Buddy. Frost Buddy is they have the multiple cups, koozies, tumblers. I have the Universal Buddy here. I have the Red City Connect. It holds any size can, slim cans, 12-ounce cans, 24-ounce cans, all of the above. And they sell a universal lid to make your cup into a tumbler as well. Keeps your drinks cold for 6 hours, hot for 6 hours. Great stuff they're doing over there. frostbuddy.com/redhotreds to get yours. But yeah, today they win 5-0. Abbott just looked great. Looked like 2025 Abbott today. What do you 6 innings, 3 hits, only had 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. What were your thoughts on Abbott today, and then overall, just today's game?
Yeah, it was good to see another good start. I think he's really had kind of 3 good starts in a row. Abbott has back-to-back shutouts, and I think I was looking. He's given up 2 runs over his last 3 starts, but the 2 runs were against Colorado and kind of that first of the 3 starts that I'm mentioning. So Abbott's actually looked pretty good consistently now for a few games, which is awesome to see because I think, obviously beginning of the year, it really wasn't looking great for him. He had an okay opening day, but then, kind of struggled after that. So I think that's awesome to see, especially with this rotation. It seems like it's been kind of a whirlwind. We finally got Lodolo back. I guess I don't want to go too much in the Friday's game yet, but really awesome to see out of Abbott. And then the offense too. I mean, it was timely hitting by a few guys, and anytime you can score 5 runs and the other team gets 0, I mean, it's a good day. But it was really just a good win and a good way to close out the series with the rubber game, being today. So I don't know, man. I'm feeling a lot better, like I said, against what I was against the Cubs, but this is a good spot for the Reds to be in. I think they really needed to answer at home, and they actually got some decent crowds too. That was cool to see. So yeah, looking good, I guess, across the board, but I'm sure we'll get into it more in depth.
Yeah, so the 4th innings where it all kind of started, Ellie singled, and then Sal Stewart followed him with the double, and then J.J. Bleday drove them both in with the triple. So that was really good to see. J.J. Bleday's been a really nice addition to this team. And it was really good to see Tyler Stevenson get a hit too. He's really struggled offensively this year. That doesn't really excuse his play, but he's been really bad. But it was really nice to see him get a nice solid contact for a hit. And then later in the game, Blake Dunn had that double that he tried to stretch into a triple. His team went back, but just really good to see him go. And he's had a really good stretch of games since he's been called up. And then, it was really good to see Sal just get that extra base hit. He's been kind of struggling here lately, and it's not that he's been playing bad. It's just the ball's not going his way. He's making really good contact, loud outs. Just for some reason, it's not going for him. But he's picking it back up, and I have all the faith in the world that he'll be going. Going back to yesterday on Saturday, they bounce back. They win 3-1. Chase Burns didn't have the swing and miss stuff. I think he had 2 strikeouts, but they were 2 key strikeouts. He got the last out of his outing on a strikeout, and then he had a lot of timely double plays and just ground balls for him. He did have the 1 hard hit ball for a home run, but he looked just everything you can imagine for Chase Burns is just what he is. And I tweeted yesterday, just sincerely apologizing for wanting to take Charlie Condon over Chase Burns, and I'm very thankful that Chase Burns is a Cincinnati Red.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was good to see at least today Burns do it without the strikeouts because we know he's a guy that can put up, close to almost 10 strikeouts a game. It seems like pulling up his stats, it looks like he had 7 against Pittsburgh and then 9 against Colorado in his past 2 starts before this. But yeah, I mean, I say all that stuff about, the Red starting rotation kind of being inconsistent and a question mark, and Burns has not been that. I mean, he's been super consistent. And I think it's pretty clear he's probably been the ace up to this point, at least of the staff. But really good to see because the Reds definitely needed just some momentum coming out of the win finally yesterday. Him being able to pitch deep into the game today, I think it's just going to be huge for this team. And I think it probably gives them a lot of confidence when they're not getting down early in games and they can put up some runs and kind of make them stand. And the way that he handled Alvarez today, I mean, that's masterclass stuff. So I don't think that's going to be every time he comes out, but it's really good to see. And I think I can't say enough good things about Burns, but I think just you always kind of wonder, right? You kind of hinted out in the draft pick, will he live up to the potential sort of thing? And year 2, I guess, of his kind of career and whatnot. So far, he's definitely answered the call, and I think, yeah, you could say Charlie Condon. I think may turned out to be pretty okay, but we'll see. But at this point, I mean, the Reds got to be. I think the Reds, at least as a whole, kind of make the organizational decision a couple years ago to draft pitching and kind of get that as their, we're going to find pitching. It's going to be in the draft just because probably no free agents want to come to GABP.
Yeah.
But they're at least they got it right so far with Burns, and we can talk about Louder too. Unfortunately, hitting the IL here, it looks like, but they I think as a whole have gotten pretty good draft picks, especially looking at those guys at least. But I don't know your thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean Burns, Louder in back-to-back drafts, getting that starting pitcher. And if think about this going back to 2017, they got Hunter Green, Lodolo, Louder, Burns. That's 4 key contributors to this starting rotation that with one of them being out in Green, Lodolo came back on Friday. But they've done a really good job of drafting starting pitching over the last, I guess, 8 years or so. Hitting hasn't been great. They drafted Sal Stewart with their comp pick in 22 or 20. What are you? 2022. They got that comp pick from the Nick Castellanos going to Philadelphia contract, and then other than that, their hitting hasn't really been spectacular. They've got Nick Senzel didn't really pan out. Austin Hendricks still in Double-A. Jay Allen still in Double-A. Cam Collier was the traditional first-round pick in the 2022 draft with Sal Stewart. He's still in Double-A. He's kind of starting to heat up a little bit down there, but not looking great. But yeah, their pitching has just been. I mean, Burns made his debut. What 4 months into the season after his draft season. Louder, he made his debut in August of 24. It's been a pretty solid draft run for them. And they go back and they go infielder this year. They go Steele Hall, trying to go back to that drafting talent over position, but there really wasn't any really great pitchers available with the 9th pick this past year. So that's fine. As long as you pick a solid potential pick with that pick. And he was the youngest player available, and he's the fastest player available. And then the comp to Trey Turner is a good pick too. So I like that a lot. But going back to Saturday, Friedel over 2 with a walk. I think that was just his second walk in his last 7 games. Blade 0 for 4. Ellie went 2 for 4. Stewart went 1 for 4. Steer went 1 for 3. He had a stolen base. And I don't know if you saw Terry Francona's comments pregame to I think it was yesterday's game. Said he doesn't believe in bingo, in that if if he makes a lineup change, it's going to be for the right reasons, which I understand. I understand what he's saying because it's not like everybody in this lineup is hitting. They've got really 3 players that are consistently putting up numbers, and one of them just got promoted with JJ Bleday. But you got Ke'Bryan Hayes, who has an OPS of 419. You got TJ Friedo's OPS is 541. Jose Trevino's OPS is 327. Matt McLean 625. Tyler Stevenson, his is below 600. His is like 5. I'll get the exact number here, but it's not great. It might look a little bit better with today's game, but 582. But it's not like they have a lot of players that can just move around and the lineup gets better. He did lead off Benson today. He goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. But I guess we could talk about this now, but do you see them making any move to bring up Edwin Arroyo or even Hector Rodriguez to possibly get just put a spark in the lineup like they did in 2023 with Ellie and McLean and CES?
I think they eventually will. It seems like they let these guys kind of mash for like a little while in AAA, and then everybody says they should call them up, and they call them up like a week later. But I don't know. I think the infield situation is trickier because if we look at kind of even last year with Terry Francona, like he's going to give McLean a pretty long leash. It sounds like he did move him down in the lineup. I'll give him, I guess, not necessarily credit for that, but I don't know, credit's the right word for moving a guy down. But I do at least agree with that, at least. And if you're going to have McLean in the lineup every day, he doesn't need to be probably batting second at this point. I think he could still develop into that player, but I feel like I've been saying that for a while now, and I'm kind of getting tired of saying it. But I think, especially if Arroyo continues at the clip that he has, I think we were talking about it before we jumped on here, but like I saw something where it's like the last 22 games he's hitting over 400 and went like 4 for 5 on Saturday or something like that. So I think that's going to be hard to ignore at some point. So I think that would make a lot of sense to maybe put him in, maybe second base or at least try to get him some at bats. But I don't know. I think the Hector Rodriguez thing. I don't know if I see him as much as I'd see Arroyo. I guess maybe like in the priority list of like Arroyo would probably come up first, I would have to imagine. But still, like there would have to be, to your point, some movement of guys that are in there now. And really the kind of glaring, numbers, at least to me, are, Hayes at third. Really, he had a couple games it seemed like where he was kind of starting to figure it out. But like as a whole, like he just hasn't been a great hitter in his Reds career, or even I guess the Pirates to some extent. But I guess I know this team values his defense a lot, which is awesome. And like, I think he is a great defender, certainly. But at some point, like you got to get some production. I mean, I think for me, like I would almost rather take like an average defender, and if he can at least, hit a little bit better than he has, which is tough because, they obviously invested a lot of money into Ke'Bryan Hayes. And, I think McLean's kind of viewed as almost a, not necessarily a staple of this organization, but he's, one of the faces of it. And it'd be a hard guy, I think, to just send down. Although I think at some point you have to explore that if he doesn't, figure it out probably by, June or July or something like that. And we're still looking at this. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to ignore Edwin and Royas. I don't know. Do you think they'll, I guess, do you think I'm right in maybe he's probably more so ready, quote unquote, than Hector Rodriguez? Or I guess, what do you think there?
Yeah, I think Arroyo's ready. I think the major question was him because he had a high average last year. I think he hit 284. It was just the power was more of a question mark for him. And he made it a point during the offseason to try to get more loft on the ball. And that's working out. I mean, he's already surpassed his season total last year in home runs. And I don't know if you caught the broadcast today, but Barry Larkin said, so I don't know if you can be a team like the Reds have and had the troubles that they've had offensively and continue to run a guy out there who's not a better hitter than 130. And that's what Larkin said about Ke'Bryan Hayes. And, if they bring up Edwin Arroyo, who has played some third base here recently in AAA, he's been primarily a shortstop, played some second base, but he's never really played third base up until this season, and he's looked okay there. I mean, I think his glove translates. He's got an arm. He's a shortstop. His arm's no question. But the question is if you're going to bring him up, do you play him every day? Like, 'cause I feel like you need to. You can't just bring him up with how hot he's been and just be like, all right, you're going to play 2 games this week. You got to play him. And I think he's ready. I do. I think that he probably plays in AAA last year had he had not had the shoulder surgery in 23. And he's still just 20. I think he's 22. So I mean, he would have been 21 last year in AAA. So I think he's ready. I think it's time. I doubt it happens this week. It's an easy move to make. He's already on the 40 man. Like there's no crazy shenanigans you got to pull to make it happen. It's just a matter of making an option and somebody down. But yeah, I mean, I guess to your point, I think he's ready. And the order would be Arroyo and then Rodriguez. Rodriguez has been okay this year. He's had a really strong April for power, and then in May it's been for average. So I don't know what they do with that. Just anything's better than Friedel at this point. I mean, even if Benson goes out there and goes over 4, I'll take it. Just I think his defense is better than Friedel's defense this year too. And Blade can play center, so it's a smaller ballpark in Great American. So center field shouldn't be a big question. And then they go to Cleveland this coming weekend, so it's not like they have a massive outfield either. And Benson and Blade both have decent speed.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, yeah, obviously Benson didn't do great today, but it is at least a good sign, I think, that, Tito's willing to kind of shuffle things around, right? It wasn't, Dane Myers, Friedel, batting leadoff, because it kind of has been the entire year. Like, and I think Benson is a guy that kind of tracks as could be leadoff guy. I think we were talking about this guy as well, but Blake Dunn, I could almost see in that role. Some days I could see him being a decent leadoff guy. That would be kind of that'd be pretty experimental for Tito. So I don't know if I see that in the near term, but it could happen. I don't know. I think we can get into this later in the show, but Dunn's at least shown some flashes, and obviously having his speed at the top of the lineup would be, I think, a good sign for this team, or a good weapon to have at least. So I don't know. I think coming out of this Cubs series, it's almost like if you were willing to try anything, like that would be the time to do it, just to try to get a spark of momentum and kind of change things up, and just maybe shuffle some guys around just to break up the the negative energy, so to speak. But I think if they can at least figure out a way to get the guys in, and they've done a great job with Blade. I mean, Blade's come up and really just kind of mashed since he's been up here, but those guys, if they can figure out a way to call up the guys that are hitting well in AAA, or even the guys that could catch fire on this team, they're going to have to pull some strings, because it's going to be hard to compete with the Cubs, right? Like the Cubs have unlimited resources, obviously a way bigger payroll than the Reds. The Reds kind of need to get the mojo right with the guys that they have, and I at least I would have liked to see certainly Benson do better today, but it shows me that they're at least willing to try some things, which I think is good.
Yeah, and I've been kind of intentionally avoiding Friday night's game, but Friday night's game they lose 10-0 after that. Just they lose 7 straight up until Friday. They lose their 8th straight game on Friday. They lose 10-0. Lodolo returns. It was good to see him back. He really didn't throw many breaking balls. He did go 5 1/3, 5 hits, 4 earned runs. Only walked a batter, gave up a walk with 2 strikeouts, gave up 2 home runs. But it was just good to have him back, and just to know that he looked healthy after the game. No issues with the blisters on that, so he should be good going forward. Jose Trevino came in the final inning and allowed 3 hits.
Getting a lot of appearances this year.
Yeah, I think he's up to a career high this year, and I
it's
had
gotta
joked,
be, right?
Yeah, I had joked that when Rhett Lauder went down with his recent injury in Chicago, that they need to start prepping him as a starter, just because
an opener, maybe. Yeah,
he might be time to throw out Trevino as an opener. But they had 5 hits on Friday. LA goes 2 for 4. Stewart goes 1 for 4. Nathaniel Lowe goes 1 for 4, and Matt McClain goes 1 for 3. LA had a double. I guess if you want to talk a little bit more about Friday's game, or if you want to talk about more about the Astros series in general, we can do that. And then, yeah, it was good to see them bounce back and end the week on a positive note.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing that also stuck out to me, at least from Friday's game, was Santion. I think he gave up like 4 runs. Let me pull it up just to make sure I'm correct on that. 4 earned runs on Friday. And it seems like it's kind of been a rough stretch kind of overall for him, especially this past week. And at least when you saw Pagan go down last week, Santillan was probably a guy that's like, all right, I can maybe see him being the closer. He's been pretty solid, and it's just kind of career as a whole. Seems like a guy that could do it. But now, so I don't know if I'm thinking that. Like, I don't know your thoughts, and maybe I didn't, I don't want to set you up and naming a closer if you're not ready to do it. But with Pagan being out, I really like the way that at least Ashcraft has looked towards the end of games. So I think maybe that's my if you're riding kind of the hot hand as a pitcher, I would maybe stick with Ashcraft at this point. But Santion, I hope, can figure it out because if they're not going to close, with him, I think they certainly would need him kind of in a leverage position still with like 7th and 8th inning. But I don't know. It's tough to see, him kind of have a few poor starts in the recent memory, or not starts, but just appearances in the recent memory. Because I really thought that Santillan could be a guy that could take the reins, from a guy like Pagan going down. But I don't know. Did you kind of are you worried about, I guess, Santillan at all, or is any other headlines more so?
Yeah, I think with him, he pitched a lot last year, right? He pitched, I think, 80 games. It was a career high in innings. He'd never pitched that many innings before. Looked really good, but he started to fall off towards the end of the year. I think he was kind of the consensus backup closer should anything happen to Pagan, or if they didn't bring back Pagan. But I really like Graham Ashcraft a lot. He was when he got moved to the bullpen last year. I think me and Roger talked about that, and Roger actually brought it up with his bulldog mentality on the mound that he would be an excellent closer. And yeah, he pitches an inning today, 2 strikeouts. They only had 1 walk today. Just great to see the walks finally calm down.
Yeah, and we got a run. We walked a run in for us rather than the other team, which seems like they were
Yeah,
doing that
that was
tons
nice
in
to see.
Chicago. Yeah,
Nice little change of scenery there. But
yeah.
yeah, I guess my 2 picks that I had were Ashcraft and Connor Phillips. But Pierce Johnson looked really good on Saturday, and I wouldn't mind seeing him more. He had a lot of ground balls on Saturday, so that was good to see from him getting out there. And it was really cool too. Him and Ashcraft were both on the bereavement list for, I think it was both for their grandfather, and it was nice to see them get back and have a really good outing. And Ashcraft's got his ERA down to 1.74, and he's looked really good. It's just I worry about what are they going to do with him, because I think this is his last year of arbitration, or if he's got maybe one more year of arbitration. I'll have to fact check that, but they kind of fought over like $200,000. So like I don't
Gotcha.
know if they would extend him to get that done to be a long-term closer. But I love Ashcraft's. He finally has that swing and miss stuff going for him, and his sinker and his cutter has been like just insane. I think it was Pitching Ninja when he pitched in the earlier in the season had a 101 mile per hour cutter, and that was just nasty. So I love Ashcraft, and I love Phillips. If Phillips can calm down on the walks a little bit.
True. And I think to your point, or maybe Roger's point, he does have that energy of, being kind of just a high energy guy on the mound and, celebrating after he gets a swing and miss, which I think you almost kind of need that as a closer anyway. And not that Santillan doesn't have that, obviously, but I think, he would fit in very well, just kind of mentally in that role and, just emotionally, I think. Obviously it's a lot easier to celebrate when things are going well, but I think at least you kind of like that edge, at least to him to come in the ninth. It's a different inning, man. Like some guys probably like to say it's just another inning, but like I think you kind of do have to be able to channel that adrenaline almost and make things happen, which he has. So yeah.
Yeah, I talked to AAA closer. Well, he's AAA reliever Trevor Consul. He was a closer in Double A last year. He was a Southern League All Star. He has transitioned more into a middle innings, late innings guy, like seventh inning, eighth inning, maybe. He's had a couple save opportunities this year, but I asked him what his mentality was compared to saving, and he says, I treat every game like it's the ninth. And I think that's a closer's mentality. And I think Ashcraft can have that. I think once he gets a couple saves under his belt, I think he'll thrive in that role. But
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at this point they kind of need at least somebody to step up, because it looks like, I mean, Pagan's what, on the 15-day, but I mean, I don't see that being a super quick return, I guess, if he just started throwing, I think, on his knees or something yesterday. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't know. It didn't look great, obviously, coming, out of that game in Chicago with, having to be carted off the field and everything. And it's been a hamstring that's apparently been kind of nagging him all season. So hopefully a quick return for Pagan. I think he's had obviously a rough year, but I still think he could be a huge part of this team too.
Yeah, he said after the game that it was a strain, because like if that's what a strain feels like, I couldn't imagine what a torn hamstring feels like. That's like
No doubt.
that was bad. But something that wasn't bad was Andrew Abbott on Sunday. Just really, he's bounced back his last couple starts, like you said. He only had one walk today. He had the only walk of the game. 6 innings, 3 hits, a walk, 5 strikeouts, looking like 2025 Abbott. And he probably couldn't have picked a better time to bounce back and look the way he has. What are your thoughts on Abbott, and how do you see him looking going forward? I think he pitches Saturday versus Cleveland, if I remember right. Off day tomorrow on Monday. I think the Friday game is the TBD with Louder being placed on the IL. But what have been your thoughts on Abbott this year? Do you think like maybe ABS has played a part in with his command, or do you think it's just him just working through some other things?
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard the ABS kind of narrative too, and maybe that, I'm sure it gets in guys' head a little bit, just to know that they can't really play around the edges maybe as much as they would, just because things will actually get, called if it is a ball or a strike. I guess depending on how many challenges the team blows through, but I don't know. I mean, it was good to see at least today. I think 5 strikeouts, so that's swing and miss stuff, and you know, I think the biggest thing for me is it seemed like early in the year he was just also just getting hit like pretty hard too. It wasn't even necessarily pitch, locations where he was missing calls and things like that. But I mean, it even started, I guess, in spring training too, where he just wasn't getting guys to miss much, and they were really just making good contact. It seemed like, every start. So I think Abbott will hopefully figure it out, which I guess isn't a great, strategy of hope. But I with the guys like that, I always kind of try to figure out like what is their long term kind of performance looked like. And I think, at least from my perspective, Abbott's been pretty solid for a few years now, and certainly was an all-star last year. So I mean, I think it'd be one thing if this was like his first season and we're like, oh, can he keep this up? Like, I don't know. I think at this point, at least, like, I think he'll be more so the Andrew Abbott that we have kind of known over the past couple of years and these past couple of starts, more so than what we saw at the beginning of the year. Hopefully it was I could see him just kind of taking a long time to get things figured out. And now he's kind of dialed in and pitching like Andrew Abbott can pitch. So I don't know. I think he's still going to be a huge part of this rotation, but I don't know your thoughts at least.
Yeah, so he's always been a quick starter in terms of getting things figured out. When he debuted in 23, he had a 1.21 ERA in June. That went up to 3.31 in July, 6.08 in August, 6.10 in September. And then in 24, that was his first full season. April 3.27 ERA, May 3.30, June 3.71, July 3.29. And then in August it ballooned up to 5.57. And that was when I think he kind of realized that it's a long haul. He's always been, I think he's been a reliever in college, and then they kind of transitioned him into a starter when he got to, I think, Louisville in 23. And 25, just as a whole, was his best season of his career. Pre All-Star, 2.07 ERA. post All-Star 3.4 ERA. August is when he kind of ballooned up to 4.45, but he was just I don't want to say dominant because I don't think dominant's the right word for what he was, but just he was lights out. I mean, he got the ground ball when he needed it. He had his first complete game shutout versus the Guardians in Cleveland. Just he was a workhorse last year, and I think maybe the fatigue maybe caught up to him going into the season, and I think we're starting to see him kind of get more relaxed and just he's probably still fatigued, but just learning how to pitch through that fatigue, and the leg strength is really starting to get back to where he needs it to be. But he's looked really good these last 3 starts, like you said. And the Houston start today, 6 innings. The Chicago start, 5 2/3, 4 hits. The Colorado start, 6 innings, 5 hits. And he has been striking out decent hitters. 5 strikeouts today, 4 strikeouts versus the Cubs, and 5 strikeouts versus Colorado. So just really, really glad to see him figuring it out and just pitching through the struggles that he's had and getting back into that, because when he gets back and Green comes back and Lodolo's there, he's the number 3, and he's probably the 4th best pitcher on the rotation with Burns. So with those 4, with a healthy Green and healthy Lodolo, I mean, that's a solid rotation.
I think it's also a good point. You're talking about guys, getting stretched out to a full season of, MLB innings. Because really a lot of these guys, you talk about Burns, Louder, even Hunter Green to some extent, just because he's never really put together a full season just due to, injuries and things like that. It's an interesting thing to keep in mind just for a lot of these pitchers is, they're kind of figuring out a way to pitch through a whole, whatever seems like 9 months of a season. And I think it's something that has to be tough to some extent. You talk about towards the end of the year, especially, guys getting fatigued even in the bullpen, just from being overworked. So it'll be interesting how the Reds can manage that. I don't think this is, what was it, 2010 year where we go with like 5 starters the entire year era anymore, unfortunately. But so guys will kind of cycle in and out, and you hope that, not that you hope that, guys are going out for injuries, but, if they can at least kind of plug and play these guys a little bit to, I think they're erring on the side of caution right now with Louder, for example, and giving him some rest just to not overdo it. I think I heard someone mention basically last year he kind of pitched himself, or before his injury last year, he was pitching himself into kind of not necessarily into injury, but he was kind of hiding some injuries, so to speak, and didn't really want to come out, and tell people, hey, I'm actually kind of hurt. So I think if they can figure out a way to almost be cautious with these guys and know that, it's hard to say coming out of an 8-game losing streak last week, but I think we still do, the Reds at least have a decent amount of pitching depth as guys that can be in the rotation. So if they can at least find a way to almost optimize those guys and even if they get a little bit tired, give them some time off and know that we essentially have some reinforcements and guys like Chase Petty and a bunch of other guys that can hopefully come back here soon from injury. I think that's going to be a strategic play for Tito and the organization, but I think it could work into their strength just with the numbers that they have, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of going back to Abbott, just, he just looked confident today. And, it's good to see him, I've always said you're only as good as you feel. And with Louder, like he said after the game that he didn't want to come out and he was just kind of working through it. And, with the injuries that this rotation's had, you can't do that right now. We'd rather have you miss 2 games than miss, 2 months. And I think that's kind of key. But kind of going back to Abbott too, he threw 55 of his 85 pitchers for strikes today. TJ Antone was great. Good for him coming back too after 3 Tommy Johns. But something that wasn't great was the series in Chicago. Just an absolute crapshoot of a week. They lose 4-5 on Monday, 2-3, 3-2 on Tuesday, 7-6 on Wednesday, and then they lose the getaway game 8-3 in a really a winnable game on Thursday. I don't know where you want to start with this, but I guess we could probably start with pitching, just because starting pitching has been fairly well during the losing streak. It's been the offense that really, and I guess the defense to a degree, that has really let us down. Chase Petty gets the call for Monday's game, goes 5 2/3, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, and a strikeout. Just a really, really good outing from him, just based off of his season last year. And he's had some really good outings in AAA. His first start of the season, I think he goes 4 2/3, but he had 8 strikeouts and didn't allow a run. I think 1 hit. And he's had multiple, shutout appearances, or, less than 1 run appearances, and then he's had a couple with like 8 runs. So he's been like either extremely high or extremely low. But he showed me something in, I think it was his second to last AAA start, where he didn't have his best stuff and he was walking guys, but he was finding a way to pitch around and get out of it. And he really showed some maturity. And I think we saw that in the Chicago game, where he didn't have his best stuff and it kind of got out of hand a little bit for him. I think he walked 2 straight batters and then allowed that 3-run home run. But I guess for the positive sides, what were your thoughts on Petty? And then I think, was that the game where Pagan got hurt Monday, right? I think, or was that Wednesday?
He blew it Monday and then came in, I think, after that, right? Later in the week and got hurt.
That's
Remember that?
right. Yeah,
Up, I guess,
that's
but,
right.
yeah.
But
But no, I mean, going back to Petty, I think to your point, that I think it was a huge moment too, because he had that 3-run inning, and then was it the 6th he came back out, and I think maybe only, I don't know if he finished the inning, but he had a good inning. Like I think they just took him out more
2/3, yeah.
situationally than yeah. So like he didn't necessarily like get pulled because he was struggling, I guess is my point. But like it was good to see for me, because especially with a young guy, like you could definitely, I could have seen a scenario where he gives up the 3 runs in that inning, the 5th, I guess, and they just kind of call it like, hey, good start, whatever. Like, thanks for keeping us relatively in it. See you later. But I think Tito having the confidence and bringing him back out, I think would go a long way. You would think with Petty too, just being like, all right, look, like I at least ended on somewhat of a high note. I didn't, get pulled after I gave up a 3-run dinger. And, I think that would have left more of a bad taste in his mouth, certainly, right? Doing that and then getting sent back down, thinking, all right, man, like these guys might not have too much confidence in me. But I think to your point, I mean, all in all, like the 3-run inning, or the 3-run inning kind of stunk, but I think you got to look at it as a pretty solid start from Petty. And especially as Reds fans have kind of seen him over the past, couple seasons now, where, maybe, he's kind of that guy that's on the verge of being pretty good for this team, but, hasn't shown the dominant stuff yet. But I think that's at least a good building block. And I think we can talk about this later, but we're probably going to see him pretty soon again, for this Reds team, just in the rotation with kind of how things shake out. But I thought it was a really good start by him. I think the walks kind of made it worse than it could be, which is kind of silly to say, because obviously the walks weren't a great way to, start off that inning. But if he could almost have not done that, fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever, like you'd rather give up a solo home run certainly than a 3-run. And if he can minimize those mistakes and, to your earlier point, minimize the walks, kind of has been a thing for this whole staff lately. I don't know. I think I guess I'm still trying to say I have a lot of upside. I think that coming out of Petty. So I don't know. I thought it was a good building block, and certainly you didn't want to see Pagan blow that game, because they were still certainly in it. But I think he did enough to keep them in it against a good Cubs team.
Yeah, and walks have been an issue for the Reds pitching staff going back to the Pirates series. I think I did the math. They had 22 walks last week. They had 6 walks in game 1. They had 7 walks in game 2 of Chicago, 4 walks in game 3. That's 17. What was game 4? 7 more walks in game 4. Just awful. Just a lot of walks. It was just not ideal. And what was unfortunate was they got walked off 3 straight games. They lose Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in walk-off fashion 2 of them were in extra innings. And then in game 4, if we can probably talk about this now, but if you go into the Tyler Stevenson play where Ke'Bryan Hayes gets the ground ball to third, he tags third, throws it home, and Stevenson just doesn't tag the runner. If I'm trying to think, how many outs were there on that play? I feel like there was 1 out, so that would have been 2 outs on a double play if I remember right.
Yeah, it would have ended the inning if I'm thinking correctly, but yeah,
If it wouldn't have
it all
ended
blends
the inning,
together.
it would have been 2 outs and there's a runner on first and second, and you have the lead runner on both plays. That's a little league play. That's something you do when you're 9, 10 years old because you just haven't played enough baseball to understand that the runner's been forced out at third and he's throwing it home. I don't know what Stevenson was looking at with that play, but that happened right in front of you. Like, as the catcher, you've got to be paying attention for the whole play. You have to see that he tagged the base, and I think it was Talking Baseball. Like, what are you doing, Tyler Stevenson? He points at Ke'Bryan like, "Hey, good play, man, good play." And it's like, no, dude, like, what are you doing? If you tag the guy out, there's 2 outs, and I think the score when that happened was 3-0 when he scored. It would have been 2-0 had they had held him for that inning, and they don't blow up for 7 runs in the 4th inning and they only score 2. The Reds come back and at least, if they don't win the game, because they scored 3, they scored 1 in the 6th, 1 in the 8th, and 1 in the 9th. I think they loaded the bases in the 9th inning. I mean, they potentially win that game. Had that, I'm not saying that they lost the game because of Tyler Stevenson, but the game is a drastic different outcome had he had been paying attention. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it almost just seemed like a mental lapse of like, I don't know, just probably not clicking to him that it wasn't a forced play. Because yeah, to your point, like he saw that Brian Hayes made a good play, and I think he must have known that he got the out at third, but I think just not necessarily forgot or didn't think that he had to tag to get the runner out. But yeah, that was a huge one, and certainly Pagan gets a lot of flack for blowing it too. But I've been really high on Dane Myers this year, but I think he came in that game and struck out in like a pinch hit roll, and then he had the miss kind of played ball out in the ivy. I think to start off the 9th, with was it Pete Crow Armstrong ended up getting, was it a double or triple out of it? I think. Um, so that was a huge momentum one, and not one that it's not a play that I see a lot of people kind of talking about that led to a pretty bad inning kind of overall. But and I'm not trying to like blame Dane Myers for it either, kind of like you're saying with Stevenson. But I think you know there's a lot of things that go wrong in a baseball game, when you lose, and I think those are just kind of some standout plays that it's not all on Pagan, or it's maybe not on Myers or Stevenson and these guys, but it's just a lot of miscues that kind of. And that's the toughest thing. You talk about 3 walk-offs in a row, like those were all pretty winnable games. You even talk Thursday was pretty winnable game. So it's like, for whatever reason, this team just seems to choke against anybody in the division. But I think they went from coming in the week like at least tied for first, and then they ended up last again after the Cubs series, or maybe it was after Friday, but definitely dropped in over the past week from being towards the top of the Central. But yeah, it's just a lot of weird miscues, man, and like. It was one of those things that you didn't want to see it snowball, because like anytime you're on, even like a 3-game losing streak, it's like you got to figure it's getting in these guys' brains a little bit. They're probably pressing higher and harder than they would. But it's good to see them obviously bounce back this series too. But yeah, I didn't know if did you clock the Myers stuff like I did, I guess, as being kind of pivotal, or I don't know.
I think that was a key play too. And Myers has been really good defensively for them this year. And he made a play in, I think it was Saturday's game, where he kind of lost the ball in the sun and then made a catch going into the wall in center field. That was a good play by him. He's been a really good option for them. And I would take his 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts over Friedel right now too, just because at least Dane has really good splits. He's not bad against right-handed pitching, but has really good splits against lefties too. And he's just been hitting the ball really hard. I'm good with seeing a platoon of Myers and Blade and Benson in center field as your three center fielders. Just if you're not going to pick one to play every day. But going back to what you said about the division, they're in last place. They were in first place to start May. And yeah, they've won 2 in a row, but Milwaukee's won 4 in a row. They're starting to catch, their lightning in the bottle, as we say, their voodoo magic. And St. Louis is, they've won 7 out of their last 10 games, and I don't think they're going anywhere. In Chicago, they've lost 2 in a row after sweeping us in 4 games. This division is going to be very hard to win. You've got to win your division games to have a shot. And I think we've won 1 game in this division this year. I think, what was it? The 1 game against the Pirates. So we're like 1-9, I think, in the division this year. And it's not off to a great start. And 5 games out, 2 weeks into May. Not ideal, but it's May, so I like if we can figure it out, just keep winning the non-division games, keep winning series.
The good news is we don't play the Central as much as we used to, I guess, but
yeah,
still.
It's probably a good thing. We'd probably be under 500 if we played the division like we did 10 years ago. But 22-19, just not ideal, and kind of going back to that Stevenson play, that it seemed like everything that could go wrong in the Cubs series went wrong. You lose your closer in just a nasty injury. It did look way worse than what it was. And lots of walks. And I think it was funny. I don't know if you saw it, but Trace Fowler was doing his State of the Union on Twitter, just sitting on his chair. He's like, I would go for a walk, but I've seen enough walks today. And the Stevenson play happened while he was recording. It was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And and the Myers play, too. It's just, that was unfortunate. But I'll give him credit that at least he has a track record of being a good center fielder. Stevenson doesn't really have the best track record of being a great defensive catcher. He's been more of an offensive catcher, and the offense hasn't really been clicking for him this year. And it's really an important year for him, too. It's a contract season. He's going to be a free agent at the end of this season. And making plays like that while you have a 525 OPS is just not something that's going to get him paid this offseason.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too, because to your point, he's not necessarily known to be a defensive catcher, but he's also not necessarily known to be an offensive catcher now either, which kind of stinks because I think a couple years back, you almost saw a scenario where he could be maybe a middle of the lineup kind of power guy for the Reds, and it almost just seems like it's spiraling in the opposite direction, unfortunately. So they'll have some decisions to make. I think, what do they got? Trevino, what's his contract? Another 2 years?
2 years, I think. But he's going to be 36 at the end of that contract.
Right.
They do
and he's not killing it, obviously, either, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've got Alfredo Duno. He's in high A. He's had a really good May. I doubt they rush him. I mean, if he's dominating single A, you potentially move him up to double A to end the season, just to kind of get his feet wet for next year. They do have one catcher that I'm keeping my eye on is Ryan McChrystal. He was drafted in 24 out of East Carolina, and he just got promoted to double A. So he got a taste of high A last year. I think it was like 20 something games. End of the season with a concussion, but he played to start the season with the Dragons and was hitting over 300. He was their co-offensive player of the month for April. And then May 1st, he gets promoted to double A. And he's looked really good in double A. He's a good catching option for them. Maybe he could potentially, if he does what he's been doing, he's hit at every level. He doesn't chase. Has a good on-base percentage for a catcher. Really good offensive catcher, but really good defensively too. He could be one that they might fast track to get up there to potentially be I don't want to say out of spring training next year, but he could be a potential fighting for a promotion towards the end of next season, and for sure going into camp in 2028.
Yeah, that's a tough thing too, because I mean, you probably know a lot more about the minor league guys certainly than I do, but I've obviously heard of, Dano. It just seems like those guys are not necessarily, next year ready, so to speak. So it'd be one thing if was doing this in AAA this year. So like, you could see a scenario like, all right, Steven said has a bad year. At least we got Tano coming up next year. But yeah, it just seems like they'll hopefully get some better production. I say all that about Ty Steve too, RBI single today. So shout out Ty Steve. I don't want to be too negative on him. I still like the guy, but it just stinks. I think, they're not going to obviously make any big decisions, middle of the year. I don't think, at least as far as their, catching kind of rotation. But it just, if things continue like this, you don't necessarily see a scenario where they're pushing to bring him back super quick or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. He hasn't played a whole lot this week in Double A, but he did make his debut and he had an RBI single. McChrystal did, but if he gets to Triple A this year, which is, I don't want to say it's likely, but with the Reds catching depth, he might get up there. And Jacob Friend, he's in single low A right now, but he's more than just a catcher. He plays catcher, first base, left field, right field. I think he played some third base if I remember right, but mostly he's an athlete. And he was in the same draft class as McChrystal. And they might be fast tracking these guys just because they know there's probably a slim chance. I say slim to zero chance that Stevenson comes back, and they're going to need help with the catcher position. I don't think PJ Higgins is a long-term option. I don't know if Will Banfield's a long-term option. Trotwine, I think he had some injuries. They're going to have some decisions to make a catcher for sure. But we can talk about some positive notes other than thinking about the future. As we got our player of the week. We had kind of talked about Blake Dunn a little bit. He had a really good week. He goes 3 for 7 with a home run. Had a double today, a stolen base, 2 walks. But all in all, we picked, our face of the franchise, as we saying. Ellie De La Cruz goes 11 for 30, 2 doubles, a stolen base, 4 RBIs, had an 808 OPS for the week. I don't think we can say enough good things about Ellie De La Cruz. He's been the consistent player that we've hoped he'd be this year, and his defense has been a lot better. He did have the play in Chicago that he probably could have made had he had just maybe not tried to do too much, I guess would be the word to say. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Ellie's week?
I think you said it really well, and I'm not breaking any news here either. But like, I think Ellie's had a pretty solid year for this team, and I think last year there were certainly the questions around the defense mostly, but even some offense. But he's really, I think, made the step this year as a whole, hitting from both sides, hitting more for average. To your point, his defense has improved a lot, I think, so far. He's making really good throws. He had that play kind of in the hole about a week back. Ball got by Brian Hayes. He backhanded it and threw it over to first. And he's throwing missiles. And obviously, we knew he had a good arm, but he's not throwing them into the camera well, so to speak. Knock on, like we saw kind of in the past, which he'll probably do it Tuesday now that I said that or something. But no, I think overall, it's just been a really great year from Ellie, and I think it's even more so kind of epitomized in the past week. I mean, I think I just can't say enough good things about him. He seemingly answered every kind of question that we had about him from an offensive or defensive standpoint. And he's doing it consistently too. It used to be kind of like, I feel like it used to be at least more so like flashes in the pan type of thing, but he's putting these kind of, weeks together and, seasons as a whole, at least this season that, it's always tough because you see these guys and you're like, man, if only the Reds could sign a guy like this. So it's like one of those things where you want to enjoy it while you got it. But I think to sum it all up, I think he's definitely deserving of the red hot Red of the week.
Yeah, he's only got 3 errors on this season, and We're almost a month and a half into the season, and he had 26 last year and 29 the year before. And if I remember right, Barry Larkin led the league in errors a couple times early in his career, and he really turned it around. And Ellie's what, 24? Like you're gonna, it's consistency with him. He's such a long human being. Like was he 6'5", 6'6"? Like, there's a lot of moving parts, and he's they've turned 27 double plays this year. Like him and second baseman. I'm assuming McLean's been the second baseman. The majority of those. That leads baseball in double plays, and he's got a 981 fielding percentage. Big improvement for him this year, and it's been just if there's one question mark we've had other than strikeouts, but even with strikeouts last year, he was near outside of the top 10 for a lot of the season. And Ohtani strikes out a lot. Aaron Judge strikes out a lot. A lot of these top strikeouts are just part of the game. Adam Dunn would be a $500 million contract guy if he played today. But it's good to see Ellie's defense just really taking that next step along with his power. I mean, he's matched his season high in homers from the right side from this year. And I think he surpasses that. And he probably sets his overall career high this year for right-handed home runs. I think he's got 13 altogether from the right side. And I wouldn't be surprised if he hits that many from the right side this year. But just overall, just if we could just find a way to extend the guy, I wish we could, but I'm not getting my hopes up.
No, and the only thing I guess I would say, I was thinking kind of on his season as a whole, and I think the stolen base numbers, he's got like 9 of them, I think this year, maybe total, but we're not seeing, the Ellie of that Milwaukee series a couple years back where, he stole, every base that he could,
Yeah.
second, third home. Like we're not seeing that anymore from Ellie. You're seeing some caught stealings here and there, which, I mean, that'll happen, but that's the only thing that, it hasn't been disappointing, but I guess it hasn't been, what I thought it could be with him just tearing it up, stealing bases. And I think there's certainly a different focus with Tito compared to what there was with David Bell, where they were kind of just running all the time and, just trying to put pressure on by running on the bases. And Tito's more strategic with it, I think. And not trying to run into outs and things like that. But that's the only thing. Like I thought Ellie would be kind of like almost a Billy Hamilton, he's always stealing type of threat. But that's the only part. And I wouldn't even say it's regressed, but it's just, I guess I'm more so probably just surprised that I see him get caught stealing, which isn't probably fair to him, but will happen over the course of a year at least.
Yeah, so his swing percentage is down from 28% or from 45% swing percentage to a 39% swing percentage. So he's really not chasing as much as he used to, and his contact percentage is up to 71%. So he's making a lot of contact. So he's still striking out at a 28% rate, but I mean, he's a power hitter with speed, and power hitters strike out, and I can take the strikeouts as long as they're not in the most clutch situations all the time. You're going to strike out. It's baseball, but I'm just really happy to see him kind of turning that page and becoming that face that we know he can be for this team. And MLB's Twitter page had him as a highly considered MVP candidate through the first month and some games in May.
I mean, I think it's definitely got you see in the conversation. I mean, even coming into the season, people kind of had him up there. So I think he's, like I said, lived up to that. But and shout out to Blake Dunn too. I think we talked about him kind of at the opening of this segment. Really solid week. That game against Chicago where they pinch ran him, he stole the base, ended up scoring a run. Like that was it was just really cool, man. Like I don't know, like it was just good to see like a guy kind of plug in and people within the organization say that his speed, rivals Ellie, at least in like a straight line, running to first, like, which is crazy to think about. But I think he definitely does have it. And really, I think he's been a pretty good spark plug in this past week for the Reds. But yeah, as kind of we talked, I guess, already a little bit about, but just the overall numbers, Ellie kind of bigger sample size in terms of games played. I think it just had to go to him, but really good to see Blake Dunn do what he has for this team coming up.
Yeah, Blake Dunn, just really good to see him just playing well, because last year he really struggled when he started the season with the team on opening day. Him and Jacob Hurtubise and Reese Hines too, I believe. All three of them made the team out of spring training. Dunn and Hurtubise kind of got the majority of the playing time over Hines. Hines really struggled. He gets optioned down. Dunn really struggled, gets optioned down. But Dunn in AAA hit well over 300 for 3.5, 4 months and just looked really good. I have some more numbers on Ellie too, if you want to hear them. So last year,
Sure.
his average exit velocity was 91 miles per hour, and his average launch angle was 7.6. And this year, in a short sample size, his average exit velocity is 93.7 miles per hour, and his average launch angle is 13.1. So he's getting a lot more loft on his swing. And I don't know if that's, we don't like to give credit, but maybe is that a Chris Valleca thing? Maybe they're working more on getting him more launch in his swing. His barrel percentage is up 5%. His hard hit balls, he's already got 55 hard hit balls. He had 198 last year. He's at a 50% hard hit rate, and like you said, he's batting 288 on the season. So just overall, OPS plus is 135, just 35% above league average. He was at 110 last year, 119 and 24. Just overall, Ellie's just been a monster this year. But yeah, let's move on. We have,
And you've heard, I guess I was just going to say, you've heard the kind of mechanics that he's switched up to, kind of being shorter to the ball with his swing. So I think, somebody made a decision to change up his swing. I don't know if that's Vlaka or, Ellie, or a mixture of both, but yeah, whatever they're doing, it's working. But yeah, that's all I got on that. Sorry.
Yeah, they took out his toe tap and they went back to his leg kick to kind of get that back to what got him here. And sometimes that works. I do know that last year we did see a higher average for him with the toe tap. And you take the knowledge that you learned from the toe tap and you take that into your leg kick, and we're seeing the results pay off with him hitting for more average and for more power. And we'll take it as Reds fans. If we get MVP Ellie, that just means more success for this team. But moving on, we have the Nationals on Tuesday. We got an off day tomorrow. Starting pitchers, we have, I just had it and lost it. We have not good TV here. I believe
it's what, Singer and Michaelis on Tuesday?
Yeah, Singer Tuesday, Burns Wednesday, TBD on Thursday. I'm assuming it's probably going to be Chase Petty. He pitched today. That puts him right along for 5 days rest. Then they travel to Cleveland, turn it right back around to Abbott and Singer, and then Burns on Sunday. What are your expectations? We don't have to go in too much detail. Currently, the Nationals are, did I pull this up?
19 and 22, according to what I'm looking
19
at.
and 22. They're 5-5 out of their last 10. They've lost 2 in a row. They are 3.5 games over the Mets for last place in the NL East. NL East has been kind of weird this year. Really only have the Braves that have been good. Philadelphia is kind of heating up. They've won 7 out of their last 10. They've won 2 in a row. I don't know what to expect, because for some reason Washington always handled this pretty well here in Great American. But I think I'll let you take it away on this. I'm expecting some. I just want to see him win. I don't want to see another losing streak.
Yeah, and I think for me, especially the game Tuesday with Singer pitching for the Reds, I think he's a guy that I think has almost regressed this year, so to speak, in terms of his performance. And Really, it seems like a couple bad starts, as of late, especially. And I think if basically what I'm trying to say is they need to get better performance out of Singer, but especially if you want him to kind of be the guy that's eating innings and a steady kind of arm for this guy, like he's almost got to be better than what he has been. And I think he's not a guy that's going to necessarily get injured at the same clip as some of these other guys, at least historically speaking. He's famously pitching through blisters and things like that. He's kind of going to always be taking the ball, which you got to respect. But just it seems like he's a guy that really needs to start getting it back on track, almost like Abbott has in his past few starts. But if they can get some turnaround, performances out of him, the next month, I think that's going to be huge for this team, obviously. But I don't know. I think I look at these games against Washington as being winnable, just because of their record and kind of where their organization is at as a whole. But I don't know. I think you really hope that Brady can figure it out and kind of keep the Reds in it, even if it's only like 5 innings, but 3 or less runs or something like that. I think I would take at this point, just to start off the series. But then, yeah, you were talking about too. They're going to see Lodolo again. Seems like a pretty quick turnaround, but you just always kind of fingers crossed at this point that he holds up health wise. But those are kind of my big, at least, almost highlighted items, at least, just kind of how our starters will battle the Nationals, not only from a performance standpoint, but health. And you just hope to see some consistency out of it, at least, is my biggest thing.
Yeah, so this is the game on Tuesday that you hope that the back of the baseball card really holds up against Miles Mikolas. Benson has a home run, 3 RBIs, and 12 at bats. It's a 583 average, 1538 OPS. Bleday's got, I think he's 1 for 2. He's got a 500 average, 1500 OPS. Ellie has a 333 average and 15 at bats, 945 OPS. Not expecting a whole lot of TJ Friedel, but he's got a home run, 316 average, 965 OPS against him. And Ke'Bryan Hayes, 23 at bats, 348 average, 826 OPS against Mikolas. And Spencer Steer does have a home run, 4 RBIs, 16 at bats, 438 average, 1132 OPS. And then for the Nationals against Singer, you got a whole lot of unknowns for this. You've got a couple players who don't have a hit against him. Their outfielder Lyle, 1,000 average, 4,000 OPS, 3 RBIs and 1 at bat. I'm assuming that was just like an RBI, 3 RBI double, but just not a whole lot of unknowns against Singer. And then game 2 is Nick Lodolo versus Jake Irvin. Not a great offensive showing for the Reds lineup against him. At least 333 average, 968 and 12 at bats. Nathaniel Lowe's got a 667 average with a 1667 OPS. Spencer Steer, 333, 733 OPS. JJ Bleday does have a home run against him, but a 167 average and 6 at bats, 834 OPS. And then Matt McLean is 0 for 7. Dane Myers 0 for 1. And then on Friday, we got Thursday, Chase Burns versus Foster Griffin. Nobody's faced Foster Griffin for the Reds. And then for the Nationals, CJ Abrams is batting 333 against him in 3 at bats, 1 for 3 with the RBI. Luis Garcia, 2 at bats, 500 average. Brady House, 3 at bats, 333 average. And then James Wood 0 for 3. And then I get this last one here. Jacob Young is 1 for 2 with a 1500 OPS. So whole lot of unknowns in game 3. It's going to be interesting to see Burns. Hopefully he can get swing and miss stuff because there is some power in that Nationals lineup with James Wood. Just he's a really good power option. He's been kind of playing well this year. And yeah, I feel pretty good about this series. Hopefully the back of the baseball card really holds up. And then there isn't any probables yet for the Cleveland series. Cleveland's 21-21 as of Sunday. The Reds currently hold the Ohio Cup trophy. They won their first Ohio Cup trophy in, I think, 10 years last year. It's been a long time. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's going to be Chase Petty on Friday. I don't see them really making any other move with Louder going on the IL. It just seems the timing's right with Petty pitching, I think, today. Didn't have his best stuff in Louisville, but, if he can just be consistent, limit the walks, and then turn it right back around to Abbott and Singer on Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, hopefully we can get a winning week, get back to our winning ways, and kind of get back into the division, because next week we start with Philadelphia on the road, and then we come back home to St. Louis, and that'll be our divisional test next week. And we haven't been playing very well in the division. But anything on the Nationals and Guardians?
Yeah, just looking through the probables, that game Thursday with Burns and Foster Griffin, it stinks that's the afternoon game. So if you have to, work or whatever, that stinks for, trying to watch it. But that's going to be a really good pitching matchup. I mean, all the praises we've sung about Chase Burns. I'm just looking at Griffin's numbers for Washington, and he matches Burns with a 4-1 record. Burns has got a 2.11 ERA. Griffin's 2.12. Burns 48 strikeouts on the year, Griffin 42. So I think that's going to be a cool matchup, just to see those two guys having really good seasons, and what's going to give, obviously. But that could be a low scoring game, but it'll probably be a 10-10 game or something going into the ninth. Just me jinxing it, but that's going to be a fun, at least, pitching matchup to watch if you can. Hopefully, listen to it, on the radio or whatever if you're working. But I wish that game was at least at night so more people could watch it.
Yeah, Foster Griffin's given up 9 hits in his last 3 games. 9 strikeouts against Miami, 3 strikeouts versus Milwaukee. Does get the loss in that one. He had 4 walks. And then versus the White Sox, he had 8 strikeouts in 7 innings. So he's been really good. He's only played in 15 games in his career. I don't want to say he's young, he's 30, but he's a young major leaguer, and he's been really good for them.
Yeah, and then at least going off the Ohio Cup, it stinks. I think Cleveland gets the home weekend series this year, but I'm pretty sure we play the Guardians like during the week in Cincinnati, which, like, I feel like that should always be weekend matchups, on both sides, just with the crowds that they can draw for both, stadiums. But hopefully we can go up there and do some damage, because I'm so tired of losing the Ohio Cup. Obviously last year was good, but it just seems like my entire life before that we were always losing it or tying it so we wouldn't win it. It'd be like a 4-game series over the course of the year and we tie. So it's like, all right, well, they still get the cup. It's like, dang it. Because I got a ton of friends there, Cleveland fans from just around Ohio, and it's always fun to trash talk them any chance I get. But hopefully, and it's now you got the Tito element too for former Cleveland manager, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, and if there's one thing the Reds learned last year, is to play Will Benson. No, he absolutely destroyed Cleveland last year. And I don't know if you have any hot takes, but my hot take for this week is that Will Benson goes out and wins Player of the Week just based off of his weekend versus Cleveland.
That would be awesome to see. I don't have any hot takes, but I think that's definitely a good, it's a good hot take, just because I think one would be a turnaround from Will's kind of not bad season, but just 0 for 4 today and hasn't really had a killer year. But yeah, if he's going to turn it around, I would definitely take it against the Guardians. You got to figure it means a little bit more. Maybe he won't say that it does play in a team that got rid of him, so to speak. But I think that'd be awesome to see. And to your point, I mean, the outfield outside of Blade kind of needs that production out of somebody. So hopefully he can kind of step in and take over a little bit. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a pivotal week. This is, I don't want to say it's going to make or break a season, but it's going to make or break your confidence going into the next month. If you set the team record for the most wins in the month of April, they have 20 wins going into May 1st, and you lose 8 straight to start the month of May, and you lose 8 straight divisional opponent games, and it's not a great look. But this will be a week that
the Central's still tough, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's such a tough division. But
everybody's
Austin,
winning
thanks again
still, despite our struggles. Yeah.
Yeah. But thanks again, Austin, for hopping on with me and talking some Reds baseball. And if you don't got anything else, go Reds.
Go Reds.